So if the West Coast is in fact the Nazi Germany of hip hop, then why is it that we don't look at West Coast hip hop culture as toxic? Or at Kendrick Lamar, Suge Knight, Tupac Shakur as villains of the culture? Like, why is that? In other words, if the West Coast is the Nazi Germany of hip hop, then why is it that we don't associate aspects of West Coast hip hop culture with a certain level of toxicity or a certain level of just negativity in the first place, right? So I believe that West Coast gang culture is like the fascism of hip hop culture, right? So fascism is like a far right wing ideology, right? It's like a far right wing ethos, where there's like a cult of the leader, right? And this leader like promises to return his people to greatness, right? To return his people to prominence. Things were in the past, things were great, and then they weren't, and now I'm here to make them great again, right? We've heard this story a million times. Hitler was promising the German people to return them to greatness, right? Benito Mussolini was promising to return the Italian people to their glory days of the Roman Empire, right? In essence, to return them to greatness. It's very important, right, to note that the fascist leader presents themselves as like the alternative to like the tyrannical, current tyrannical leader of the government, that's in power currently, and that leader is typically part of the aristocracy, right? And then you have this new leader coming up who's going to, again, return the people to prominence. Gang culture is also the equivalent of Aryan culture in its toxicity. So both belief systems create casualties of its participants, regardless of merit or character. In other words, you're special because you're in the group, and you're in the group based off of you being, born and living in this neighborhood, or born and living in this, corner of the neighborhood, or born and living in this city, right? Or whatever it may be, right? In Nazi Germany, it was blonde-haired, blue-eyed Germans. Now, not all Nazis were blonde-haired or blue-eyed, of course, but, Hitler wasn't, but that's, that's another story for another day. There was a time where gangs were only found in Los Angeles, Chicago, or New York. Today, gang culture is found in every major city in America. So much so that gang culture has bled its way into hip hop culture, and it's been that way for many years now. And I believe this is primarily why we've seen that same gang culture be the cause of the demise of some of the all-time great hip hop artists. The Notorious B.I.G., Tupac Shakur, Nipsey Hussle, PNB Rock, Pop Smoke, King Von, Young Dolph, Draco the Ruler, Julio Fulio. He's a very recent one. Every ethnic group in this country in the 20th century has gang representation. There is no community that's immune to this. The Hells Angels, the Latin Kings, the Asian Boys, F-13, MS-13, the Tiny Rascal Gangsters, Vice Lords, Bloods, Crips, and many, 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 many more that are, again, represented in every ethnic group in this country, in every major city in this country. You might think that I'm being hard on West Coast hip hop culture. You may think I'm being hard on California. You may think I'm being hard on Los Angeles. But an easy argument could be made that the closest that hip hop has ever come to dying, the hip hop has ever come to death, has been at the hand of gang culture. And sadly, the inherent violence that comes with it. Gang culture has been the number one export from LA, from the West Coast to the rest of the country. It's been the number one export. Not a new rapping, not a new style of rapping, not a new, innovative way to rhyme, not a new innovative way to, produce music. That's been adopted by any, large number of hip hop artists. And so when I say that Kendrick Lamar specifically is not referring to hip hop culture in the same context that we think of it, that I believe he's referring primarily to West Coast hip hop culture, to West Coast culture, to West Coast gang culture, to West Coast street urban culture. This is partly why I can say that with the confidence that I'm saying it with. My eyes and my ears work. I love hip hop as much as anybody. I love hip hop more than most people, I believe. But I really love it. That means I love all the parts of it that are positive contributions to the culture, that have been a net positive. Ask yourself this. If the West Coast had never contributed to hip hop whatsoever, no Dr. Dre, no Loonies, no Snoop Dogg, no Exhibit, no Hieroglyphics, no Kendrick Lamar, no Schoolboy Q, period. No West Coast hip hop. If the West Coast had not contributed anything to hip hop whatsoever, which would be terrible, by the way. But in exchange, we also did not get any of the gang influence from the gangs that originated in the West Coast. Would that be a net negative or a net positive for hip hop? If unfortunately we never got Doggy Style, if we never got Good Kid, Mad City, if we never got Damn, if we never got The Chronic, if we never got any of these all-time great West Coast bodies of work, if we never got the documentary, if we never got the game, if we never got Ice Cube, if we never got Death Certificate, if we never got any hip-hop contribution from the West Coast. But in exchange, that also meant we never ever got any of the gang influence from the West Coast. It just never happened. Would that be worthwhile? Would that be worth it for the rest of hip-hop and the rest of the country? Would that be a net negative or a net positive for hip-hop culture as we know it today? Would hip-hop be better off today, and hip-hop culture, and by extension, black culture? Because those things are synonymous, right? Would we be better off or worse off? Ask yourself that. Whether you agree with my take or not, I don't think that there's an argument to be made that that's not a hell of an interesting question. A hell of an interesting question. Till next time.